and you're very welcome to today's video where I talk about the 3 fantasies that are ruining your style. I should also mention that of the 3 fantasies I'm going to talk about today, I am going to name the problem, but then I'm also going to suggest some solutions for each of those problems as well, in the hopes that you'll find something useful to take away from this video. You're very welcome today. My name's Trish and I started this channel after an accelerated style journey which changed my life. On this channel I share outfit ideas, style tips, tricks, I share mistakes I've made in the past, all in the hopes of saving you some time, money, and maybe even some embarrassment as well, who knows. Now 2 out of these 3 fantasies I think you will be quite familiar with. Certainly the first one I'm going to speak about I think we're all very familiar with. But the 3rd fantasy is one I never hear anyone talk about, and it's the one I fall prey to the most. It is the #1 fantasy for me personally that absolutely has sabotaged my style in the past and has actually really dented my self-esteem and my self-confidence. So once I gained the knowledge that I was falling prey to this fantasy, it gave me a lot of power to actually change that around and take back control over my own self-image. So do stick around when I talk about that 3rd fantasy in particular. But to start off with, I'm going to talk about the one fantasy that we're all very familiar with, I think, and that is the lifestyle fantasy. It basically involves dressing or curating a wardrobe that does not match your lifestyle. So for example, you'll see people go out and buy sequined dresses or fancy tops where, and I definitely have been guilty of this myself in the past, I buy them even though I don't really go out that much and I don't really like parties. It's just me. I'm a real kind of stay-at-home girl or go out to dinner with my friends in my friends' houses. That is one of my favorite ways to socialize. So I don't really need a lot of fancy blingy things. That is an extreme example, but I think it is really common when people see something they like, really like the look of it, don't consider their lifestyle at all, buy it, and then this item just sits gathering dust in their wardrobe. So anything from high heels, stilettos, sandals if you don't live in a warm country. I live in Ireland, so it's very cold. And you know, there's only very few months in the year where I can actually wear sandals, for example. So it doesn't make sense for me to buy or add too many sandals to my wardrobe. I've been eyeing up this absolutely amazing piece from Lily Silk recently. You know, it doesn't suit my lifestyle. Would I love to wear it? Yes, oh, of course, it's so beautiful. But would I really get my cost per wear out of it? I don't think so. I may treat myself to it anyway because my birthday is coming up, but look, I'm under no illusion. I would not have cause to wear this type of piece every week or even every month, being perfectly honest. So that is a piece of knowledge that will give me power over how and when I add things to my wardrobe, how and when I spend my money, and knowing and being mindful of my true lifestyle, which involves a lot of dog walking, a lot of working in the office, a lot of visiting family and friends, just in really casual, informal settings. That is my lifestyle. When it comes to the lifestyle fantasy, I think one of the most common problems we see people have is they cannot get away from leisure wear and loungewear. Now, I did a talk on personal style a couple of weeks ago and I asked the people who attended the talk what was the biggest problem that they were currently facing with their wardrobe. And so many of them said the fact that they just cannot get out of their leisure wear since the pandemic. And again, this goes back to lifestyle. Maybe leisure wear is the most appropriate type of clothing for your lifestyle. But if it is, then it's worth investing a little bit more in good pieces. There are some really amazing pieces out there made out of lovely fabrics like cashmere, for example, that I think are really worth investing in if that's what you wear most of the time. Another really good tip to elevate your loungewear is simply to throw a blazer over it. I don't know about you, but the hoodie under a blazer look is absolutely one of my favorite looks when it comes to style. The final tip I would mention when it comes to leisure wear is to add jewellery. You know, when you add jewellery, it elevates any outfit. It automatically makes you look more polished and put together and like you put an effort in. So knowing your lifestyle and being very clear-headed about it will really help you mindfully and correctly add pieces to your wardrobe. It will save you time, effort, money, and disappointment as well. The second most common fantasy I see people fall victim to, if I can put it that way, is the money fantasy. And what I mean by this is the expectation that just because you pay a lot of money for something means that it's automatically going to look great on you. It's automatically going to drape perfectly on you. It's automatically never going to show signs of wear and tear. None of those things are true. And I think this is a fantasy that we can overcome by arming ourselves with knowledge. So, for example, what exactly does a designer piece bring to the table? Okay, so how much do the materials cost? How is that material constructed? Is the garment constructed in a silhouette that suits your particular body type? All of these things must be considered before making that investment. I think a really good example of this is a handbag, a designer handbag. So we have been told over the years that designer handbags are very expensive because they use premium materials and they're made using excellent craftsmanship. Now, both of those things are true, but when we actually look at the cost of the materials, so the leather, the hardware, the stitching, the linings, the canvas, things like that, when we actually look at the costs of those things all put together, plus the craftsmanship, which is undoubtedly really good, that go into those bags, there's still a lot of money left over. So I really recommend you to go and watch this channel called Tanner Leatherstein. He works with leather, he's really knowledgeable about all the different types of leather, and he makes bags himself as well. So he's knowledgeable about the craft that goes into the construction of these items. And he does these really great videos where he deconstructs a bag and breaks down all of the materials and the craftsmanship and gives an estimated price. And invariably, for all of the designer bags he's ever deconstructed, the price of materials and craft is a lot lower than the actual price of the bag. The markups are absolutely huge. And I think for all of us, it's really good to be aware of exactly what we're getting when we buy a designer bag. You know, there is an enormous markup, and that is because of the branding, because of the prestige, because of the history, and because of the really clever marketing that they've done over the years, which has kind of hyped the quality of their materials and construction. So if you want the prestige of a designer bag, then go for it, you know, absolutely. Maybe it's worth it to you, but just be aware of what you're paying for. And the last thing I would say on this, just to use it as an example of the money fantasy, is I've seen a lot of people over the years complaining about the craftsmanship on designer handbags. So for example, they would say things like, oh, the stitching is uneven and that's not good enough for a bag I've paid $3,000 for. But the truth is that these bags are handmade. That really is part of the appeal and the prestige behind these crafted items. They are made by human beings. So sometimes stitching will be a little bit uneven, or you know, you'll have a line of stitches that aren't perfectly straight, and that's because it's done by a human being, not by a machine. And you know, I personally would actually value that human element, and I think a lot of us are the same. So, but again, that money fantasy blinds us to the fact that just because you pay over the odds for an item, thousands of dollars for an item, doesn't mean that that item is going to be absolutely perfect, or it doesn't mean that item is going to look absolutely amazing on you. I think when it comes to the money fantasy, the main weapon we can arm ourselves with is knowledge. And once we have that knowledge, we can make our purchasing decisions really mindfully. The third fantasy that I never hear anyone talk about, but the one I think is responsible for a lot of really bad purchasing decisions, is the body shape fantasy. So I've talked about this a little bit before on my channel, where I don't have the typical influencer body. I'm not tall, I'm petite, I'm only 5'2", and I am not skinny as well. So I have a lot of curves, and sometimes that can be a little bit challenging to dress. It can also be challenging to dress when, even to this day, we're still bombarded with photos of super skinny models on runways, super tall models modeling all of the new high street collections. So for example, COS's models are all really tall, really slender, total supermodel types, and it can be very difficult then for somebody like me to visualize how those pieces will actually work on my particular body type. And I think a lot of people fall into this trap. The other thing about this fantasy that I will mention is that I have often in the past seen something that looks great on somebody who is taller and skinnier than I am, and just assume that by buying that piece it would make me look tall and skinny, which is just ridiculous. But it is a fantasy I've fallen prey to over and over and over again in the past, and I refuse to think that I am the only one. And this fantasy has caused me to waste so much money on clothes over the years, I'd be afraid even to count it, to be honest with you. So this is definitely the fantasy for me personally that has had the most overall detrimental impact on my wardrobe and on my self-esteem as well. But it's something that does have a solution. And the solution that I have discovered is, well, it's a couple of things. Number one, building your own self-confidence. I know, it's easier said than done. But if you want a shortcut, I found it. And the shortcut I found was learning how to dress my body type. So once I took my measurements and learned my proportions, I was able to dress my body in a much more effective way. And suddenly I went from unflattering outfits to really flattering and comfortable outfits that looked great on my particular body. So I discovered basically that it wasn't my body, it was the clothes. And it's always the clothes. It is always the clothes. I cannot repeat this enough. It is never our body that's the problem. Clothes should fit us and not the other way around. So combating this fantasy is all about understanding your own body type and celebrating it. You know, you hear it said a lot, but it really is true that we all have our own beauty to offer the world. And the older I get, the more I truly believe this to be true. Certainly I have experienced it in my own life, and it's one of the reasons why style has been so transformative for me. It's because I have learned how to see my body in an objective way without emotions attached to it. I understand my proportions, my measurements, and using that knowledge, and knowledge is always power, using that knowledge I have then created outfits that suit my body and flatter my body, enhance what I want to enhance, conceal what I want to conceal. And the whole process has really improved my confidence and my self-esteem. So I couldn't recommend it enough. So if you, like me, have fallen prey to the body image fantasy, then please use some of the information I've just given you in this video. Stop, reassess, take your measurements, understand your proportions. I have a good few videos on my channel all about this. So for example, I've done 2 videos on petite style tips, and I've also done a video on confidence. So I definitely recommend you check that one out as well. I'll leave them all linked in the description box for you if you want to learn more. But do ditch the body image fantasy for good. You'll be so glad you did. If you're enjoying this video, then do give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. And I'd also be really grateful if you would subscribe to the channel. I am on a mission to reach 4,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I think it's a little bit tight, but with your help, I think we might be able to achieve it. So do subscribe, you'll be very welcome to our community. I do a lot of styling ideas and tips on my Instagram as well, so I'll leave the link in the description box for you and here on the screen for you as well if you want to follow me on there. So do let me know what you think. Have you ever fallen prey to any of these 3 fantasies? The lifestyle fantasy, the money fantasy, or the body image fantasy? Or are there other fantasies that have derailed your style? And if so, please do let me know in the comments box and let's start the discussion. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.